Yoshida is a 26-year-old virgin wage slave loser who was rejected by his crush after he confessed to her, just like you. But his life will soon change after taking in a homeless girl, keeping her in his basement. It all started when Yoshida invited his co-worker and boss, Goto, to a fancy dinner one night. He has been working together with Goto in the same department for the last 5 years, and tonight, he feels like he can finally say it. He has been hiding it this whole time, but he has the biggest crush on her for 2 big reasons. So he tries inviting Goto to his place after their date, but instead of having the best night of his life, Yoshida ends up drinking all night long after she rejects his offer. Turns out she's already in love with someone else, and Yoshida is basically a dumbass for thinking he can pull that 10 out of 10 bitch with his goofy ass. His best friend, Hashimoto, tries to calm him down, but Yoshida is still down bad and cannot accept that Goto is literally out of his league. As he leaves the bar and walks home alone like the total bitchless loser he is, he stops momentarily after seeing someone sitting by the lamppost, a 17-year-old high school girl named Sayu. Yoshida considers if he's going to get a wanted level for what he's about to do, so he looks around to make sure there are no fucking FBI agents near him. After making sure he's in the clear, Yoshida walks up to Sayu and asks her what she's doing. When Sayu tells Yoshida what's up, he scolds her and tells her to go home. But she tells him all the trains are out, so she's gonna stay with him. Yoshida refuses and insists she go home or find somewhere else to stay, but she offers him something he can't refuse. She tells him that she will let him hit if he allows her to stay at his house, which stuns him. Sirens are already blaring in his head after hearing this ridiculous offer, but he lets her stay with him for the night because he's too tired to argue. Before he sleeps, however, Sayu asks him if he doesn't want to smash. But Yoshida insists that he's not like Dream from Minecraft and would prefer if she would just make him a sandwich or miso soup tomorrow. He falls asleep, and the next day, he wakes up surprised after seeing that there's a high school girl, a literal minor, in his house. He can't believe he's going to jail for something he did, but cannot remember. However, Sayu keeps saying he allowed her to stay in his house. Despite hearing this, Yoshida still can't believe her and knows that he is so cooked if the police find out, because it's 10 years minimum for things like this. So he asks Sayu if he did anything weird to her. Thankfully, he was so fucking drunk, he forgot to commit a felony and had fallen asleep soundly last night. With all the possible charges dropped, he notices the food she made for him and eats that immaculate cuisine. While eating, Sayu even offers her body to make him feel better, especially after knowing that he was rejected last night. But Yoshida is a principled jigga-chad and knows that he's not attracted to little kids because he loves the dommy-mommy girlfriend type. After the confrontation, Yoshida learns that Sayu is a runaway high schooler from Hokkaido, which is like 7,000 McDonald's away from Tokyo. He tells Sayu to go back home, but Sayu doesn't want to, so he tells her to just work part-time, offering his apartment to her until she's independent enough to go back home. Knowing Sayu's plight, Yoshida decides to do what's best for her and tells Sayu to become his personal cooking and cleaning machine for the time being while he's away at work. So when he eventually gets back home, the room doesn't smell like shit and there's food on the table. Yoshida becomes Sayu's sugar daddy after spending a week with her and even buys her the latest trip, so she doesn't become a generic anime NPC wearing the same clothes every day. With each passing day, people start to notice the sudden change in Yoshida's behavior, and Hashimoto even points out how everyone at work knows he's got a girlfriend. Yoshida's criminal rise levels go up, because all of a sudden, the girls at work start to notice he doesn't actually look so bad himself. He just needed to have clean, ironed clothes, a clean-shaven face, and a bad anime bitch will cook miso soup for him every day and night. Because of this sudden change in his lifestyle, one of his co-workers, Yuzu, starts asking Yoshida if he actually pulled a bad anime bitch, like everyone was talking about. But Yoshida dodges the question and tells her that he was actually rejected by Goto, and he's still not over her, especially since Goto has got that MILF dog in her. Hearing this, Yuzu cheers him up and is actually thankful that he's rejected, because now she has a clear chance to bag him for herself. The next day, Hashimoto accompanies Yoshida to buy Sayu her own phone, all because he wants to keep in contact with her at all times. He teases him for doing a lot of things for Sayu, telling him that he's actually in love with the runaway girl, but Yoshida keeps denying it like he's guilty of kidnapping, even though it's very obvious. But just when he is about to go back home, Goto suddenly invites him to eat together for dinner. Inside the restaurant, Goto starts asking him if he actually has a girlfriend, because she notices how well-groomed he is every day and how obvious his closeness is with Yuzu. But he denies all of it because, in reality, he's still in love with her, despite being rejected before. However, he feels like Goto shouldn't really be asking him about his love life or even giving a shit about what he feels, especially after what happened, because now he's totally confused about what her agenda is. But after getting back home and seeing Sayu, he feels like his heart is in the right place, especially after seeing her smile genuinely for the first time after receiving his gift. The next day, after their shift is over, Yuzu invites Yoshida to a movie date. 2 hours later, he walks with Yuzu and talks about the film they've watched. Yuzu tells him that she learned a lot from the movie, and she won't be letting go of her fate, suddenly hugging him out of the blue, which surprises him. But he pushes her away and tells her to go home. So Yuzu playfully bids him goodbye. Unknown to Yoshida, Sayu actually saw what happened between them and was hurt by it, since he's been thinking all day about how he would eventually find a girlfriend, which would result in her getting kicked out again. So instead of returning home, Sayu spends her time thinking about what to do next in the park. But Yuzu runs into her and recognizes that she's a teenager and will probably be taken by the police if no adult is with her. So Yuzu decides to stay and talk to Sayu to see what she's all about and why she's out in the middle of the night. Upon talking to her, Yuzu also learns that Sayu is a runaway child and sympathizes with her because she, too, used to run away from her parents in the past. Sayu then reveals that there's someone who's nice to her, but she fears that she'll soon be abandoned as well. So she thinks unconditional kindness doesn't exist because she didn't get to experience anything remotely close to it. But Yuzu thoroughly believes that there are genuinely kind people in the world who won't ask for anything in return and advises Sayu that if the person she's yapping about is really kind, that she should just believe in them instead of doubting them. Yoshida arrives at his apartment soon after and immediately panics when he realizes that Sayu isn't there, so he bursts outside to find her. But when he arrives at the park, all he sees is a completely safe Sayu accompanied by his coworker. However, seeing her safe does not make him feel any better, and asks Sayu to explain later. Yuzu butts in and asks him if Sayu is his child, which of course he denies because it's pretty obvious he's not a single father yet. Later that night, Sayu asks him if he wants to get some plot development and get into Interpol's Most Wanted. But he adamantly rejects her offer, which breaks Sayu's composure, because the men she's been with before all wanted nothing but to sleep with her. She feels humiliated and dejected when he just keeps on edging and declining her to hit it off, because that's all she's ever known. Every man she's run into took advantage of her, and when the advantage ran out, she'd be thrown out like some used condom. She believes she's for the streets, because she doesn't know what it feels like to be for the sheets. But Yoshida tells her that she's so much more than what she thinks she is because she is cute. She's got a good body and can do chores. But most importantly, Sayu's a positive input to his life because he started to change because of her. Sayu's existence gave him a purpose and made his life so much happier than before. And there's nothing wrong with Sayu staying with him, because he believes he can fix her. A couple of days later, Sayu gets a job at a nearby convenience store and meets Asami, the store manager, who guides her through the basics of customer service. Curious about Sayu's place, Asami visits Yoshida's apartment and meets him later that night. Upon seeing his face, Yoshida's illegal Riz also gets to her, who mentions that he's kinda hot at first glance. She spends the night talking to both Yoshida and Sayu, but as she's leaving, she asks Yoshida to escort her outside. On the way home, she tells him she ain't believing his bullshit about Sayu's past, but warns him to be careful of Sayu's deceptive smiles because they can mean many things. So Yoshida clarifies things and sets boundaries, stating that whatever Sayu thinks of him is true, but it's also not right for him to blurt out secrets like a high school girl. The next day, Goto invites him to eat dinner again, mentioning how much he's changed from all the years she's known him. But this time, he takes control of the conversation and confronts Goto, because he's had enough of her bullshit and how she's always asking about what he's doing as if she cares about him. Much to his surprise, she reveals that the real reason why she's so obsessed with him is because she actually likes him.
What the f?
Hearing this confuses the hell out of Yoshida, because he can't discern whether this bitch is trolling or is actually for real. It doesn't make sense for her to reject him if she actually liked him from the start. Like, chat, is this real? But he just can't believe her lies anymore, so to prove that she actually likes him, he dares her to sleep with him. Goto doesn't object and even tells him she's a virgin, but just as Yoshida's about to reach heaven, He immediately backpedals like a coward and monumentally fumbles an anicap anime MILF. He apologizes and clarifies that it is just a joke, even though Goto is prepared to restart the Japanese population and send it straight to the moon. He isn't prepared to take these big steps with her, but he's willing to wait until Goto herself asks him to go out with her, for real this time. After their dinner, Goto learns from Yoshida that he's actually taking care of Sayu and asks him to meet Sayu. Right off the bat, she asks Sayu if Yoshida did something to her, but Sayu immediately tells her that he is like an angel sent by God. But before they continue their talk, Sayu asks him to leave the house for the time being and get them some fresh ingredients from Walmart. He agrees, and once he's outside, he runs into Yuzu, who is clearly stalking him and Goto. She then invites him to go shopping with her, and after they're done, she asks him if she would let her stay inside his place tonight. But Yoshida's quick on his feet and casually parries the question, stating that he can only do that if she's his girlfriend. So, Yuzu asks him if he'll do the same if the one asking is Goto. But she immediately apologizes for what she's doing and decides to leave. With the annoying bitch gone, he goes home peacefully and sees that both Goto and Sayu are having a good time. He then sends Goto on her way, and she praises him for doing the Lord's work by watching over Sayu and not taking advantage of her. The next day, Sayu goes to work and unexpectedly meets someone who recognizes her, Yaguchi. He's one of the men Sayu slept with in the past, and he immediately knows her at first glance, but by a different name. Knowing how easy Sayu is, Yaguchi manipulates her into visiting Yoshida's place to Netflix and chill, but he immediately tries to forcefully chill with her. Thankfully, Yoshida arrives on time and immediately kicks him out of his house. But instead of beating his ass and running his fade, he just asks him what he's doing, and Yaguchi says they're about to smash, and he's interrupting them. He then follows up by saying they're technically criminals according to the law, pointing out that Yoshida doesn't have the right to say anything because he's clearly an adult and Sayu is an underage, unsupervised teenager. He can't be a dad and take care of her when the relationship can literally send him straight to a federal prison. But Yoshida stands his ground, declaring he's gonna do what the men before him should have done in the first place, and tells him he'll make sure that Sayu becomes normal again, even if she was physically and mentally abused in the past. Yaguchi leaves him alone, and tears start falling from his face because he can't help but cry due to all the vile men who abused and took advantage of Sayu's vulnerability, who could have done a better job by not doing those things to her. But they get anyways. Sayu is all but a broken girl who was robbed of happy memories in a future. Now she's just looking for validation from fat, ugly losers and the lowest scum in society by offering her body and throwing her dignity away. He tells Sayu that he'll do everything he can to make sure she can enjoy being a teenager once again without creeps and weirdos treating her like an object. The next day, Sayu spends the rest of her night with Asami, who treats her as a friend and listens to her story without judging her. This talk with Asami finally encourages Sayu to stand up for herself as she tells Yoshida that she'll do everything to make sure he won't have to worry about her. So Yoshida promises he'll do everything in his power to make sure that Sayu has a bright future ahead of her. The next day, Asami notices the same suspicious car that has been stopping on and off near their store for a couple of days now. But after their shift, she spends the day with Sayu while studying for her upcoming exams. She's worried that she'll have to study very hard, because if she fails at school, her future is cooked. Hearing this from her friend, Sayu also starts thinking about her future as she remembers what she told Yoshida last night. She wants to start over, but she's scared about her future, so she asks Yoshida to bear with her a little longer. Asami notices her anxious look and invites her to a special place, so Sayu contacts Yoshida and tells him she'll go out with her friend. Ever since she got to know Sayu, Yuzu has been observing Yoshida at work and knows that whenever he stops working and looks at his phone, it's always Sayu, and she's jealous that she can't have this type of interaction. And a little bit of interaction between Goto and him, she gets a little bit annoyed and irked. So after Goto walked to Yoshida, she asked her to have lunch with her so they could have a talk. At the cafeteria, Yuzu asks her what she thinks about Yoshida and Sayu's relationship together. But Goto knows exactly where this is going, and she herself talked to Sayu, so she knows that their relationship isn't that weird. In fact, it's pretty wholesome and admirable in some way, so she really has no qualms whatsoever. But Yuzu has a crush on Yoshida, and she wants him for herself, so she sees both Goto and even Sayu as potential rivals, even if she doesn't notice Yoshida before all of this. She keeps asking Goto if she's ever worried about Sayu and the possibility of her being in love with Yoshida, despite their questionable relationship. But Goto is wise beyond her years and knows exactly how to read Yuzu, stating that she's not worried and she's okay with Sayu and Yoshida being together because she believes that she can't control someone else's feelings, just like what Yuzu is trying to do right now. She believes that trying to force her feelings into a relationship that doesn't play out naturally as normal love would isn't worth it because it will just regress to where it started. Hearing this, Yuzu calls her a coward and scared for not even trying to fight for her love, because unlike Goto, she's more scared of losing the things that matter to her because she didn't do anything. Things get a little bit heated because Yuzu is trying to force her beliefs, so Goto stops her from embarrassing herself further, explaining that they should wait things out before acting rashly. Later that day, Yuzu meets Yoshida and asks him to go and watch a movie with her. But Yoshida declines because Sayu just texted him about a special dinner she's made for both of them, and he's excited to try it. So Yuzu just asked for his number, but he argues that it's kinda useless to ask for his number, because he doesn't text very often unless it's very important. This annoys Yuzu and starts yapping again, waffling about how he's trying to help people very often, but he's not really being helpful at all. And then she confesses her true feelings and admits that she likes him, even if it's just a little. After getting what she wants, Yuzu leaves and Yoshida comes home later that night. When he gets home, he enjoys a hearty katsudon meal that Sayu recently learned how to cook from Asami. The next day, Sayu starts her cleaning duty and Yoshida just watches her. After hearing her reason why she's cleaning thoroughly, he decides to help her, but she insists he stay on the bed and let her do the cleaning. But he feels like he should help her, but she forces him to stay on the bed, causing both of them to fall and get really kinky.
FBI, open up!
Except they didn't because Yoshida immediately goes to shower, while Sayu fiddles with his stuff, finding out that he used to have a cute girlfriend back in his high school days. She teases him, but Yoshida brags about how he basically bagged the hottest chick on their campus back in the day. Sayu becomes curious about his past relationship and asks him if he actually loved the girl he was dating before, and he responds that it's only natural to love and care for someone. And because you love someone, you really want to see them smile a lot. So Sayu instinctively asks him what he feels about her. But she chickens out and starts mumble-rapping her words out of panic. Later that day, the same car that's been patrolling them suspiciously parks next to them, and a man comes out of it. Sayu immediately recognizes that it's her brother and starts hiding behind the counter. Yaguchi sees how scared Sayu is and tells her to keep a low profile and crawl back to their inventory room. When the man enters the store, he introduces himself as Ajiwara Kazuto and asks for Sayu and her manager. But Yaguchi tells him that he doesn't know any Sayu and his manager is basically out of the store, so the man apologizes and leaves promptly. A few seconds later, he tells Sayu that she can come out now, and Sayu thanks him for covering for her. He tells her that the man is serious and it seems like he'll be looking for her regardless. And this makes Sayu anxious because it's her brother who's looking for her and she's not ready to come back home just yet. The next day, suspicious-looking men start looking for Sayu, but thankfully, Yuzu comes with the clutch and helps her hide inside the karaoke bar. She then texts Yoshida where they are, but he immediately crashes the party to fetch Sayu to go home together. On the way home, Sayu sees a poster about a fireworks display happening the next day, so she invites him to come with her, which he immediately agrees to, and the two of them attend the festival together. At the shrine, Sayu reveals that it's actually her first time going to a fireworks festival, because back then, she didn't have any friends to go out with her. When they arrive at the place, it's swarming with people, so Yoshida takes her hand so she won't lose her in the crowd. While looking at the fireworks, he realizes how lucky he is to have met Sayu, and how his life would have been infinitely worse without her. As he snaps back to reality, he immediately panics when he realizes that Sayu's no longer with him. But Sayu laughs at him for looking like a train wreck without her, before revealing that he is the only guy who knows her real name, because she gave a fake name to everyone she slept with. So when he asks for her name back then, she thinks he is such a genuinely nice guy, which leads her to say her real name. The next day, something unexpected happens as Sayu's older brother Disa appears before Yoshida, telling him that he's bringing Sayu home. He asks Sayu to come home with him, but she insists she can't come home yet, so he reprimands his little sister for her mistakes and tells her to stop acting like a child. But she tells her brother she can't do that because she's living with Yoshida and he's a nice person to begin with. However, Essa knows the reality of the world and thinks that Yoshida is just another rat bastard waiting to pounce at her at any chance he gets. But she defends his honor, stating that Yoshida isn't an animal the way Issa thinks he is because he actually cared for her when no one else did. So the three of them decide to talk it out like adults, and Issa interviews Yoshida if they did something funny together. Both Yoshida and Sayu deny doing anything, so Issa apologizes and expresses gratitude for taking good care of his little sister. He tells Sayu that their mother is worried for her, but she knows her mother well and she knows that she ain't the type of mother to do any of that. It turns out, Sayu's teacher is the one who is actually looking for her, and because of this, Sayu's mother is stressed out and wants to take Sayu home since it's affecting her work-life balance. Hearing this, Yoshida understands the gravity of the situation they're in and asks Issa for a couple of days so Sayu can think and decide what to do next. Issa agrees to it, but asks for privacy so he can personally talk with his sister. Both he and Sayu agree to it, and so she goes outside to talk with her brother. Inside the car, Issa tells her that their mother has been unstable for the last few months, and she's been calling him every day, hoping that he would at least find a hint about her whereabouts. He tells Sayu that she should go home and see their mother, but to do that, she tells him that she needs time to mentally prepare herself before meeting her mom. After all, she's the reason why she left in the first place, and the reason why she met a lot of bad people before meeting Yoshida was primarily her mother's fault. After hearing his sister talk, Issa realizes how much Sayu has matured since they last talked and tells her he'll give her a week to think things through and settle things with Yoshida before taking her home with him. Later that day, Sayu goes back to the apartment and tells both Yoshida and Isami that she's going back in a week, but before that, she needs to be straight with them for a second. She reveals that she and her mother never really got along, and because of this, she didn't get along with everyone at school, which resulted in everyone avoiding her, except for one person, Yuko. Yuko became her only friend and eventually best friend, but everyone hates Sayu for being annoying despite her not doing anything. One day, she finds Yuko inside a bathroom cubicle, drenched in filthy toilet water after she's been bullied by people who hate her for absolutely no reason. She comforts Yuko and tells her she's going to protect her, but after some time, Yuko can't take the bullying anymore, and so decided to off herself, drastically changing the trajectory of Sayu's life forever. This incident permanently scared her, and she couldn't live with the fact that Yuko had been catching strays every day, all because she was her friend. But even more so, the fact that Yuko blames herself because she believes she's the reason why Sayu is hated by everyone. Yuko's death caused a massive outrage, and the media started swarming Sayu's residence like flies to shit. This pretty much makes her mother insanely stressed, causing her to doubt whether Sayu actually caused Yuko's sudden death or not. But she's been suffering herself, and is the one who needs help the most, and instead of familial support, she gets nothing but hurtful remarks from her own mom. Her mom goes so far as to even say that she wishes she never gave birth to her, which drives Sayu to leave their home permanently. Issa knows he can't really help her much, since he's also working hard for their family, so instead he gives Sayu a phone and an allowance, advising her to stay in hotels for the time being. Eventually the money and the phone's battery run out, so she throws it into the garbage and starts to wander around. That's when she starts meeting random men who take advantage of her and use her only to satisfy themselves before kicking her out. For the last few months, she'll sell her body for food and shelter, but eventually struck gold by meeting Yoshida, who is the first person to ever see her as a person and not an object. After hearing this, Asami comforts her and asks Yoshida what his next move is. He tells her he can't do anything because first off, he's a stranger, and second, she's a minor and has a family looking for her. It's not his job or responsibility to look after Sayu when her family is already there for her. But Asami asks him to reconsider, because they don't even know if Sayu's family is actually on her side, especially after knowing that even her mom regrets her being born. So Yoshida consults Hashimoto and Yuzu about the next best move for him, especially since Sayu's situation is still a tricky one because he's subject to Japanese law. So Hashimoto tells him to stick with his original plan to send Sayu home and let her brother take care of the rest. But later that night, Issa meets with him and apologizes for all the trouble Sayu has caused her. He thanks him for taking good care of his little sister, when it should have been them, her family, who are supposed to do those things. During their talk, Issa reveals that their father is the company president of a large food corporation. But his father is a raunchy bastard and has been smashing women left and right, eventually leaving Sayu's mother for good. Apparently, Sayu's mother was asked by her husband to abort Sayu, but she refused, hoping that he would get back to her. But it didn't happen, and so Sayu became living proof that her father no longer loved her mom. Because of this, Sayu's mother hated her and didn't love her in the slightest. So Sayu's teenage years became problematic, which eventually led to her leaving home. Sayu never had a parental figure to look after her, so Issa thanks Yoshida for being a father-like figure to Sayu. He believes she was lucky to have met Yoshida and couldn't thank him enough for setting her straight. After that meeting, he tells Sayu about what happened, and she tells him that she's still scared to go back home. So for the next couple of days, Yoshida leaves very early to stay with Sayu and accompany her, making sure she enjoys the remaining days with him. At the very last day, both Yuzu and Hashimoto convince him to go with Sayu because they know it can be very scary to go back on her own. He initially refuses, but considers it after knowing that people at work will do the legwork for him. But later that day, Asami calls him to let him know that Sayu is missing. He immediately clocks out of work with Hashimoto and starts looking for her. But it turns out he's just panicking over nothing because Goto calls her to let him know that Sayu actually just wants to surprise him at his workplace to walk home together. Later that night, Sayu asks him if she can sleep next to her, and because it's their last day together, he tells her it's okay. Sayu then tells him that she's glad she met him, and that leaving his apartment is just something she couldn't do, but she knows she has to. Yoshida knows that she's scared, so he comforts her and tells her he'll go with her and see his mother together, hoping to resolve whatever strained their relationship. And so the next day, both he and Sayu travel with Issa back to Hokkaido. When they arrive, Issa asks them to spend some time together because he needs to do something first, so Sayu and Yoshida visit a cafe. It turns out, it's her first time going inside a cafe because she's never had friends in the first place will go with her. But thanks to Yoshida, she gets to enjoy something she could have experienced growing up. On the way home, she asks Issa to stop the car and drags Yoshida inside her previous school to visit the same rooftop where it all started. Upon arriving at the top, Sayu experiences a flashback of Yuko's memories, and it still haunts her to this very day, which traumatizes her very being. But after Yoshida tells her she should forgive herself and leave it all behind, she learns to accept that life must go on, despite how bad things are. And so, after all the things that happened to her, it's finally time to face her mother once and for all. But just as they enter the house, Sayu's mothers come rushing to her, bitch-slapping her without a second thought. This enrages Yoshida, but before things can escalate, Issa steps in and stops his mom from doing what she wants, introducing her to Yoshida at a rather terrible time. But she only looks at Yoshida once and proceeds to head inside. Later, she confronts Sayu and asks her what she's trying to accomplish by dragging their name through the mud and causing problems for her. But Sayu stands up for herself and tells her she's not even trying to understand how she feels. She asks her mom if she remembers the reason why she left home, but her mom simply doesn't care. So she explains the real reason why she left home, and it's all because of her. She accused Sayu of something she didn't do, and it genuinely hurt her to the point that leaving home was the best thing she could do. Sayu's mom even accuses her that she's bringing in more shame by bringing Yoshida inside their house. But Sayu stands up for Yoshida, explaining that he took good care of her when no one else did, and he did a better job at being a parent than her mom could ever do. She tells her that Yoshida gave her something she could call home, which her mom deprived her of, all while seeing her as a person and treating her as a family. But Sayu's mom still believes she's not worth her trouble, telling her that she really should have not given birth to her. Yoshida's immediate reaction is to throw hands, but he calms himself and assesses the situation. After a minute, he affirms the mother and tells her that she's right about some things, but that doesn't mean she should abandon her child. He drills into Sayu's mom's head that she's the only one capable of being her parent, especially now that her father's out of the picture. So if she's incapable of taking care of Sayu, he'll do it himself. But he reasons that he can't do that because only a parent like her can do such things. He tells her that raising a child is the parent's responsibility, and no matter how much he wants to raise Sayu himself, only her mother has that privilege. So in an act of defiance and a sense of obligation, he bows to Sayu's mom and begs her to take care of Sayu, because she's the only one who can do it. Seeing this conviction, Issa bows as well and begs his mother to be a mother to Sayu. This wombo combo of genuine appeal to emotions disarms Sayu's mom's moronic views about her daughter. So she freaks out and tells them to get out of her house, so both Yoshida and Sayu clear the room. Outside, he can't help but cry about Sayu's situation because he thought he knew what her mother was feeling. He didn't expect it was this bad, and he can't help but feel sorry for Sayu, who's been dealing with this ever since she was a child. He believes Sayu didn't deserve any of it and should have grown as a normal teenager. But it is what it is. Sayu tells him that what happened earlier is very cathartic and alleviates some of her anxieties about rejoining society. She assures Yoshida that she'll be fine without him moving forward, and he won't need to worry about him. After the ordeal, Yoshida talks with Sayu's mom one last time and assures her he didn't do anything to her daughter, all while apologizing for almost hurting her out of rage. Thankfully, it seems like his words reach her, and she considers having Sayu stay and finish high school, but after that, she doesn't care what happens to her. He feels relieved hearing this, and so he goes to his room to sleep. Few hours later, Sayu sneaks into his room and asks him if he wants to do it right now, since it's going to be the last time together. But once again, he avoids a warrant by declining her offer. He tells Sayu he doesn't need to sleep with her just so he can remember her, because they spent half a year together. Besides, they're not lovers and she's still technically underage, so doing some stupid shit will send him straight to Guantanamo Bay. And so the next day, Yoshida leaves for Tokyo and says his final words to Sayu, telling her to be good and finish high school at least, before doing something like running away or sleeping with random men. For the next 2 years, Yoshida and Sayu will be living independently, with Sayu rejoining society, while Yoshida struggles to boil an egg. But each day, things are getting better for her, while he is still a massive drunkard with an unmatched riz, as the two girls are still all over him. But on a particular night after work, a familiar girl sitting next to the same lamppost is waiting for him. As he walks up to her, she stands up and tells him, "I'm finally legal, Yoshida." And so this is how Yoshida managed to avoid both the FBI and Child Protection Services for an entire season. Comment if you'd also taken a runaway high school girl, so we can report you to Joe Biden. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.